Hello and welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from TalkTV. So pop the kettle on, this is the Royal Tea. I'm Sarah Hewson. Coming up today, a legal setback for Prince Harry as he takes on the government and the media. Reports he and Meghan could have another Netflix project in the offing. Did the Princess of Wales upstage the King? Plus, why Mike Tindall was frustrated by the coronation seating plan. Joining me to discuss all that and more, a royal commentator and TalkTV regular Afua Hagan, royal commentator and TalkTV host Daisy McAndrew, and TalkTV's royal correspondent Rupert Bell. Hello to all of you. Now, King Charles and Queen Camilla have been in Northern Ireland this week for their first official visit outside England since their coronation. The two began a string of engagements with a visit to Newtown Abbey, just north of Belfast, to open its coronation garden. Now, Rupert, they were last in Northern Ireland in September, just after the death of the Queen, a rather more jovial atmosphere.
And in a garden, which the King is going to be happy going to see a garden in Northern Ireland. And also, I think there's symbolism as well. They've actually just come off the back of elections as well. So for him to be seen to be going there and local elections, and important. So there's the symbolism, happy to go into a garden, cut the royal crown or whatever it was, that rather nice looking cake, as part of the day. But I think the symbolism that he's seen to be there fairly quickly after the coronation, I think was very important.
But of course, you can never disassociate the politics in Northern Ireland. They've just had elections. Sinn Féin did very, very well, better than ever before in those elections. So you've got that backdrop of obviously Sinn Féin, everyone knows, very anti the union, very anti the royal family, and yet head of Sinn Féin was at the coronation. So you've got all these different layers going on. And I think it's really, really important that the King and the Queen were there, putting their sort of best foot forward and sort of promoting the royal family, but in quite a gentle way.
Yes, it was gentle, wasn't it, Afua? And this garden was very much in keeping with their practices, a sustainable garden, lots of wildflowers for bees and butterflies, and a bit of a sense of humour as well in it.
Definitely. And that's absolutely needed. But like Daisy said, this is soft power, soft diplomacy, still saying, you know, we are here, we're still here. We might be less relevant, maybe less popular in Northern Ireland just in that particular pace, but it's good for them to be seen, sort of enjoying themselves, doing something light, like you said, a real sense of humour in the garden. The
dancing trees.
Yeah, disco balls and all the rest of it. And the King is always happy when he's in a garden. So this was a perfect place for him, a perfect place for them to remind people of their soft power, to remind people that they are still here and they want to still be part of Northern Ireland's story.
And I think it is interesting and no coincidence that these photo opportunities and these events are being very carefully chosen to be in environments that will hopefully show the King at his best. Because, you know, as both Afua and Rupert were saying, we know he's very happy when surrounded by, you know, nature, mud, all the rest of it. That's his happy place. And we know he has a tendency to be a bit grumpy. And so I think you can see those around him, the firm and the organisers, are really wanting to promote him as not the grumpy King, but the happy King, and making sure that he's in a good environment.
Meeting school children as well, so the younger generation.
I've spent some time in Northern Ireland way back when in the services, and you see where this country has changed. Northern Ireland has changed, and the sort of political landscape has changed. So him getting on the front foot, as it were, early on in his reign, I think is very important, and doing it as he does, which is hopefully engaging with the local community in a positive way. And there was nothing but good, in my mind, coming out of that trip at the start of the week.
On a gardening theme, the royal family were out in force at the Chelsea Flower Show this week. The King and Queen were in attendance on the first day, Monday, the same day that the Princess of Wales made a surprise visit to join a children's picnic. Now, Afua, some royal watchers expressed concern that perhaps the Princess of Wales being there on the same day as the King and Queen overshadowed at their visit. Do we buy into that?
Absolutely not. Look, it was a surprise visit made by Catherine, the Princess of Wales. She looked great in this pink dress, which, you know, sold out in the hours after
she's worn it before. Her mum's worn it as well.
Absolutely. And I just think, you know, obviously Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is the future of the royal family, along with her husband and her children. And of course, people are going to be interested in this glamorous woman who charms people wherever she goes. And I don't think actually it's about her overshadowing the king. She is putting her best foot forward for the whole royal family. And the future of the royal family is the Waleses. And we are being presented with the king and the queen and the prince and the princess of Wales as a foursome. It's like they're taking the monarchy forward, all four of them at the same time. We can expect to see much more of Princess Catherine and of Prince William and of their children going forward. I don't think she overshadowed the king at all. I think they're working in tandem, actually.
Daisy, there's a big difference, isn't there, to the Charles and Diana days, where we know that led to tensions because everybody wanted a piece of Diana. Charles is now secure in his own position.
Exactly. Charles is the king. He is in his 70s. He knows that ultimately the buck stops with him. And it is very different to back in the days when Charles and Diana would go on royal tours and all the crowds would swarm towards Diana and leave Charles a sort of rather lonely, ignored figure on the other side of the road. Things are different now. And in some ways, the only thing I would disagree with Afua is that Catherine did overshadow the king and the queen, but that it will not have been a coincidence, and people won't have minded that. There is absolutely no way that Charles and Camilla didn't know that Catherine, or those around them didn't know that Catherine was going to the Chelsea Flower Show. Of course they will have known she was going, and they will have expected her to overshadow them, because that's what she does. She sells newspapers, she sells the royal family, she's the brightest star in that brand. She's going to overshadow everybody. But when the spotlight is on her, it does filter out to Charles and Camilla, and some of her stardust sprinkles on them. It's a good thing.
I got actually slightly irritated by that headline, basically because it's sort of trying to create this sense of jealousy, which was
pitting them against.
Which was like what was Harry and Meghan's beef, was that they were always, they wasn't there doing some of the pictures that of moments in the Netflix documentary highlighting that Remembrance Day service. So that was, I was thinking, I'm getting quite emotional. I was irritated by it and thinking, no, stop this.
Yes.
Just let them get on with it.
This is a media invention.
Absolutely. So I was quite, thinking, leave it alone. Basically, we've just had the coronation. Now we're almost trying to look for a new story that really isn't there.
Yes, and Catherine is working her socks off. It's not like she's, sort of going to lunch with friends and getting the sort of media attention from that. She's getting media attention from working hard. It's completely different.
Camilla also, Rupert, made it a family affair at the Chelsea Flower Show. Took her daughter and her sister.
Well, I think it's probably quite easy for her to get a ticket for anyone. If she wants to, I'm coming, can I bring the rest of my family?
There was quite a humanising bit where her daughter Laura was saying, Mum, come over and I think you'll like to see these beehives.
But she loves all that. Yeah. She's still got her house in Wiltshire where she goes and...
Yes, and that's the thing, because we always say, I mean, I've been guilty of it myself, that Charles is the green-fingered one, Charles is the sort of gardening fanatic, but Camilla is equally committed and passionate about her own garden and doing the gardening herself.
Now, the King and Queen have advertised for a social media guru to help them reach out to a younger audience. Inspired, perhaps, Daisy, by the success of the Prince and Princess of Wales's behind-the-scenes films from the coronation weekend, do you think?
Yes, definitely. People love those little sort of tidbits, little anecdotes. Get that the idea that the curtain is being lifted and you're getting some sort of insider view of what life in the royal family is really like is one of the reasons that people are passionate about the royal family, because they want to know what life is really like in the palace, what it's really like, and some of that is gossip and sort of pure old tittle tattle, but some of it is just a fascination with how the other half live. And if they can harness that, particularly in this age where everybody's on social media, everybody's scrolling through, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or wherever it be, and try to use that to promote the royal family as more modern, as more in touch, it can only be a good thing, unless they look desperate. That's the sort of cut-off point.
So that's why they need to bring in a younger team as well, isn't it, to do this?
Now, this is the key when it's about taking the royal family forward and making them more attractive, if you like, to a younger audience, is that the king and queen need to surround themselves with younger advisors who have their finger on the pulse, who know what works, who knows what looks cheesy, who knows what is going to look slick and cool. Like the Waleses have absolutely nailed it. Whoever their social media person is, whoever's doing the filming has hit the right tone. So they need to get, and it is going to be a younger team, unfortunately. It is going to be, or fortunately, younger people around them to advise them and to be able to get this right. Daisy's absolutely right. You have to hit the right tone. And if you don't, it's going to fall flat on its face.
£35,000 a year salary based at Buckingham Palace, but an audience of millions?
35,000. I mean, that's
not
barely
great.
above a living wage in London. I mean, 27,000 was a couple of years ago, the average. So that's a low, but we know that very often the higher the sort of status of a job, the lower the salary, because people are going to be falling over themselves to get that job.
But he's got to be careful when he's doing all this social media. It doesn't look like a couple of old people trying to be trendy.
Yes, down with the kids.
Because that would just be not right. We know he's very good. You know, see what he does with the Prince's Trust and everything. That he is engaged with young people. But don't, for goodness sake,
the Prince's Trust and the environment, two kind of key issues that he can connect.
Yeah,
and you've just got to get a team or someone who knows how to get that across on screen with the king and queen still looking like themselves, but you have to make it translate. And for 35k, I'm not sure if you're going to get someone who's as top notch as you would want.
And of course, the golden ticket in any of these social media sort of jobs is to make your subject look authentic. But how do you make somebody look authentic? Because authenticity has to be real.
Authentic.
And so it's almost an impossible task. And some people do it very, very well, and some people really fall on their face.
The Duchess of Edinburgh has become the first UK royal to visit Baghdad as part of her work to support survivors of sexual violence in conflict. Sophie spent 2 days in Iraq's capital to learn about the challenges women and girls face there. And Rupert, this was a trip on behalf of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office.
Yeah, and this again, I think it highlights her importance to the royal family, that she is prepared to put herself out there in difficult circumstances, because she really does understand. She's come from a commercial PR background, but there's more to it. This has been a cause that's close to her heart. She's put her head above the parapet in terms of what she says and to help, and to go to somewhere like Baghdad, that's punchy. So I think fair play to her, because she's not frightened to do whatever is needed to promote whatever causes she's involved in. So I'm very impressed with what she's done.
And it's fascinating watching her royal career trajectory over the last few years. And of course, like so many women of a certain age, and I count myself as one of those, she has teenage children now. She can devote more time to her career, and you're really seeing her blossoming. Obviously, part of that is that she's been promoted because other people have been sacked or lost along the way. You've lost from the royal family inner circle, you've lost Andrew, you've lost Harry. So there is more work to be done, and she's picking it up.
Well, I wonder if it's not that she's actually necessarily doing more work, she's just more visible in doing that work now. We are shining a spotlight more on her because, as you say, Daisy, of the departure of some of the others.
And I think she's definitely being put more front and centre. She's seen as a bit of a secret weapon, an asset in the royal family. And I think absolutely, she has always been doing the work, on the down low and quietly, but I think we are definitely putting more of a spotlight on her and pushing her more to the forefront.
It was fascinating, of course, that they got those honours, that they became the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, because I don't think, we've all discussed this before, but that wasn't the plan. And then the plan changed. So I don't think they would, both of them, Edward and Sophie, would have been in the spotlight if the rest of the royals hadn't disappeared. So it's quite an extraordinary situation they found themselves in.
And meanwhile, some very sad news this week, and 81-year-old Helen Holland, who was hit by a police motorcycle that was escorting Sophie, died. The Duchess has said she was deeply saddened by the news. This was 2 weeks ago the incident took place. Afua, and her family had been hoping for a miracle.
Yeah,
it didn't happen.
And I just feel so desperately sad for her family. It's an awful thing for that to happen in 2 weeks of wondering what's going to happen next. And it's desperately sad that she died. It's a real shame.
Yeah, mother of 4, grandmother of 10, great-grandmother of 7. And I said 81, Daisy, but actually full of life.
Yes, I mean, my mother's 83, and so that really struck a chord with me, listening to watching that story unfold. How hideous for them. Of course, there have been some very punchy statements have come out from the family of the lady who died. Very angry,
wanting answers.
Wanting answers. So this,
watchdog,
this is a very, very difficult situation for the palace to control. Hideous for Sophie, and obviously for those involved.
Well, they've actually got to look at, again, it's the security around and the way they operate. This poor lady seemed to just be walking across the street. We know, and it was a busy area. We know that part of town. So they've just got to look at the protocols, the way they operate their security, and that they've got to investigate for the peace of mind, actually from the PR perspective from the royal family, because this is an absolute tragedy for that family. And the royal family have got to make sure the police do due diligence and make sure that there are answers.
Absolutely, and get rid of any idea that there's been some sort of cover-up or that the answers haven't been, the questions haven't been answered. And of course, it does bring back memories. I mean, very, very different circumstances. But when Philip caused that car crash the number of years ago, and there was a lot of controversy about that. Was that being covered up? Was he sort of, taking ownership of it and apologising and so on. So they have to be very careful with these situations. That
well, the IOPC are now investigating, and we understand that the Duchess of Edinburgh will be reaching out to the family privately to pay her own condolences. But very, very, very sad news indeed. Prince Harry has lost his bid to bring a legal challenge against the Home Office over its refusal to allow him to pay for police protection while in the UK. After deciding to step down as a working royal, could Harry ever have expected to have access to the same level of security? Afua, this isn't about the big picture as to whether he gets security or not. This particular case this week was about whether he could pay for Metropolitan Police officers to protect him when he's back here. And the answer from the Home Office, from the Metropolitan Police, and the judges agreed is no, not appropriate.
And there's a feeling that if Prince Harry was allowed to be able to pay Metropolitan Police officers to be his security, then they could be seen as guns for hire. And perhaps you could have rich people who have enough money to spend being able to say, okay, we want Metropolitan Police officers here, there and everywhere. That's what they feel it could turn into. And that's why they've said at this time, he won't be able to pay for Metropolitan Police officers. Now, he could decide to appeal against that decision. But I think there's two things that this boils down to. First of all, Prince Harry feels that the level of security that he needs for himself and his family needs to be able to carry firearms, and firearms like the Metropolitan Police have. Now, he can pay for his own private security, but it's whether they'll be able to carry the firearms like the Metropolitan Police can, and it's also about access to intelligence. And so will his private security have the same access to intelligence that the Metropolitan Police will? That's why he was so insistent that he wanted them. So if they've made that decision, and if he doesn't decide to appeal, this is only one part of the court case. If they decide that actually this is not going to happen at all, then Prince Harry now needs to figure out a way that he can have the level of security that carries the firearms and has the intelligence he needs to keep his family safe. And we know that the threats levelled against the Sussexes have been pretty grim and have been quite extreme. He obviously feels, and it has been, it's been shown that they need that level of security. And now I think he should focus on how he's going to go about getting that.
And if he doesn't get it,
how we go down that road.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't get it, Rupert, what does he do? I mean, the consequences potentially are that he and the family just don't come back.
Well, they've got security in the States. And obviously, when they come over here, it's a different set of circumstances. But when he came over for the coronation or the funeral, he's going to be afforded a level of protection that is reflected by what is needed. Because and also, if he's living on a royal estate, there's a natural level of protection within those grounds anyway. So, but I do have a degree of sympathy for him, because whatever you think of whether he's got a working or a non-working member of the royal family, he's non-working, but he's still a member of the royal family, and whatever, there is an inherent security risk attached to him, whatever his circumstances.
I mean, in some ways, the threat's greater now, isn't it? Because he's more high profile as the son of the king.
Well, he's the son of the king. He's very, very close to the accession. The line of succession. And he's also a very polarising figure, which means that he is a target. Both Meghan, as Afua was saying, both Meghan and Harry have had credible threats against their life. The Metropolitan Police has confirmed that in the last few months. So it's not pie in the sky that people are out there trying to get at them. That is true. I think the other thing that we've learned in the last couple of weeks, that his own security, which he's paying $6 million a year for, by his own admission, is rubbish. Now, one of the problems with that is, if you're paying the type of security that he's paying, which some people have been quite dismissive of them, saying, well, they're the Hollywood type security, Kim Kardashian's ex-bodyguard and various high-profile bodyguard types, that actually they're slightly more for show than being genuinely good at their jobs. And they're also, who do, as you and I were discussing earlier in the week, Sarah, if he's paying them and then he says to his security, I want to get rid of these paparazzi, let's shake them off. And the security says, actually, in order to keep you safe, we're just going to get you from A to B. Who's in charge in that situation?
Does he listen?
He clearly doesn't listen if he's being pig-headed about something, as I think he probably was in New York, then that's he's putting his own security at risk.
This is about precedent, isn't it? Because, Afua, because if you allow wealthy individuals, as you said, to be able to pay for better protection than you or I are afforded, that sets a two-tier system, doesn't it? And you're also asking police officers to put their lives on the line for money, effectively.
I mean, which police officers actually do every day anyway, don't they? Well, a certain section of them do. And you're right, it's about precedent. And the Metropolitan Police and the UK government are saying they don't want to set a precedent where people can buy the Metropolitan Police and have them as guns for hire. However, I think this is clearly an exceptional case. Like you so rightly said, Rupert, as a member of the royal family, he needs to be afforded this kind of security. And I feel like there's, security for working royals and ex-prime ministers and things like that.
Yes,
and
I mean, that's a good point. Ex-prime ministers, doesn't matter how long you serve, Liz Truss could have.
They have, John Major,
fully paid
Gordon
for
Brown,
security for life.
They have all this security. And then this kind of everyone else. This is a time where perhaps the royal family or whoever's in charge needs to look at making an exception, because there are real incredible threats leveled against the Sussexes. And yes, they do have the bodyguards in the United States, and yes, they have been celebrity bodyguards, but those threats are carried out of Kim Kardashian, Barack Obama. They were safe the whole time they had those bodyguards, and Barack Obama especially had lots of threats leveled against him. I'm not saying that they're the best. I'm not saying, if you can compare them to the Metropolitan Police, but there's a certain level of security that Prince Harry and his family need. They need it, and there has to be a way to be able to deliver that.
The Duchess of Sussex chose to skip a prestigious Women in Media Awards ceremony on Tuesday night, despite being honoured for her podcast, Archetypes. We don't know if Meghan had planned to go to the gala, but it does come exactly a week after that paparazzi car chase that we were just discussing in New York. Rupert, do we read anything into her non-appearance at the Gracie Awards?
As I think you alluded to, we didn't know whether she was going to turn up, but normally I think the fallout from last week means, right, back into
batten down the hatches.
Batten down the hatches, because the whole thing went wrong, because the emphasis from the event in New York, it should have been about her getting that award, whether you agree or disagree with the award. If she got it, she was the centre of the show, and it was in the spotlight. Then the emphasis completely changed, and we forgot that she got an award because we're worrying about a car chase around the streets of New York. So I think she's better off, yes, getting the award, fine. And she probably thought it was prudent just to, because then again, there would have been an inevitable amount of spotlight on them. Here she is again, and then the car journey back, you name it, probably just better to lie low.
I mean, it's fascinating to see. I mean, we were discussing this time last week weren't we, about how popular or unpopular Harry and Meghan are now in the States, which of course is a very, very important market for them. Arguably more important for them to be popular in the United States than it is for them to be popular here in the UK, because that are the people who are going to be buying what they're selling, if you like. But Netflix need, and the other, Spotify and so on, need them to be popular for their investment to be worth it. So if it's true, and we've seen the beginning of some opinion polls and some commentary that the shine is beginning to come off them in the United States on the other side of the pond, that's a problem for Harry and Meghan. So if the thinking behind this was, as Rupert was saying, lay low, let the dust settle, because we don't want to make what looks like a bad situation get worse, then that might have been quite sensible.
Speaking of Netflix, Daisy, there are rumours that Harry and Meghan are in talks with them again to produce a feature-length movie about their experiences of life behind palace walls. The project's said to have been inspired by Netflix's film Scoop, which features Prince Andrew's infamous Newsnight interview. What happened, Afua, to the look-back projects being finished and looking forward now, if this turns out, of course, to be true?
Well, this is the thing. I don't really know if I believe this at all. I mean, there was also rumours this week that Meghan was going to sit down with CNN and discuss, what happened with the car chase, and that didn't happen either. I'm just not sure how much I believe this story. If it is true, which I'm pretty sure it's not, but I could be proven wrong, then I don't know if it would be the best move.
What more is there to say?
Yeah, they've done the documentary. At Spears come out, like you've so rightly said, Prince Harry did say that was all the look back projects. Everything's about looking forward, and that's what I would like to see from them. So, but like I said, don't know if I believe this.
He could have some big legal bills to foot, though, and this would be a paycheck.
Yes, I mean,
wouldn't it?
I've actually lost count of the number of cases that he's paying for at the moment. Is it five or 6? Harry's paying for 5 cases, presumably 5 sets of lawyers, or multiple hours of legal fees, as he said. Again, coming back to the popularity in the States, the criticism in the States is that they're whinging too much, and so if this look behind the scenes at the palace was a whinge-a-thon, that's not going to do them much good. If it was, if it could possibly be a bit more positive, which I doubt, because positivity doesn't really
The tone doesn't feel like that at the moment, does it?
It's all, basically, if there's another one coming back, looking back, eye-rolling, he's got to stop this for his own good and move forward. I think for everybody, I thought the whole point of it was the book and the Netflix is line in the sand, done it, cleared the air, move on. And at the moment he doesn't, if there are these rumours, but I may agree with you and probably thinking we won't see it because common sense might prevail, but if it does, oh no, this will just, I think, alienate them even more.
But line in the sand, move on, in his words, was reliant on getting an apology, which we believe hasn't happened. So he may well feel that line in the sand has disappeared.
Let's talk about some lighter moments, shall we?
Please.
Mike Tyndall and the coronation. He's admitted he was a bit frustrated by the coronation seating plan. He may not have been alone in that one. He said, you're in the hottest spot, but it's happening all around the corner where you can't see. You do have a front row seat. It was unbelievable being sat there, but frustrating. He was in the 4th row, wasn't he, Rupert? But he said that you couldn't actually see all the action.
Well, it's like who goes to a wedding and you can't actually see the bride or groom?
Yeah.
And actually, because of the way the coronation was, there was so much happening in different chairs and everything, you were straining to see. I think there were probably 2,100 people who were frustrated by where they were
had
sitting.
TV screens, though, didn't they? On the
yeah, but that's not the same thing.
No.
And I can understand. So what he said is, look, it was unbelievable being there, but I wanted more. And isn't that the best way? He wanted more.
The other thing that we learnt from Mike was that he was absolutely desperate to get up and dance at the coronation
Yeah.
concert, but he had to wait. He was waiting for the king to lead
he
the
wasn't
way.
sure.
Exactly.
You were there, Sarah. Did you start dancing when he was on that night?
I was dancing from the first note.
So you were not concerned
But
about
I
the
you weren't
wasn't,
waiting for the
I
king.
wasn't in eye line of the king. So, well, that is all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Afua, Daisy and Rupert. We will be back next week with all of the latest on the royal family. Hope you can join us. We'll see you then.